So don't think that I haven't been thinking about what's going on with like One Punch Man, with like the manga, the retcons, the revisions, the story altering, and the anime, of course. And I think I've kind of come to a revelation about everything, and it's actually all heading towards, I think, good news, or just a good future in general, and that is season 3. So if you've been following me for the last year or so, you'll know that I really haven't been that optimistic about season 3, which is one of the things I get asked about the most on this channel, which is completely understandable. But up until now, I really wasn't sure if we were really even going to get season 3, let alone when it was going to come out. But besides the questions of like, when is it going to air, the other big questions that come with season 3 that I get are like, how many chapters are going to be in it? Where is it going to start? Where is it going to end? And that's another thing that I really didn't have a good answer for. I mean, obviously it's going to start at chapter 85 because that's where season 2 ended, and I'll go more into that stuff. But as for the ending, I wasn't really too clear on that because there's not really like a good definitive like ending point that I could think of, because season 1 had a great ending point, you know, Saitama defeating Boros and then the reconfiguration of the Hero Association. And as for season 2, it was pretty clear, at least for most of us, to see where that was going to end. You know, Garo being brought away to the Monster Association from Phoenix Man, and then Saitama serious punching Elder Centipede. Perfect ending for season 2. Lines up with season 1. But that brings me to what I was talking about. There's no real like solid concrete ending like that for season 3. And you might be thinking, well, Saitama versus Orochi makes sense. And yes, it does, but it happens too soon for that to be like the ending of season 3, because that originally happened in chapter 108, which means that there's only 23 chapters between 85 and that point. And adapting 23 chapters into seemingly a 12 episode season would really be spreading things thin. And it would also be the shortest adaptation of a season that One Punch Man has had so far, because season 1 comprised of chapters 1 through 36, which was 36 chapters. And season 2 was chapters 37 to 84, which was 47 chapters. And that was a little too much. You know, obviously it's 11 or so more chapters more than season 1. And obviously there was a pacing problem with season 2. Things were kind of rushed. And it makes me think that maybe I and the rest of us aren't the only ones that have come to these kind of questions. I think maybe One and Murata have as well. But first, this video is sponsored by the Listen But Don't podcast. Here's a clip, check it out.
Excuse me, I've had too much ice cream today. So, come on down. Baskets, 31 flavors. It can be the way that the night starts, and who knows, maybe you'll get a little nuts after that and have yourself a regret or two. Come on down. Get yourself some pecan, orange sherbet, or vanilla. Other flavors available by request. Located on 8776 Crenshaw Boulevard, right across the street from Popeye's Fried Chicken and Waffles. Located on 8777 Crenshaw Boulevard, right across the street from Popeye's. Located on. You kidding me? Located on. You can't keep doing that. Okay. Located on 8777 Crenshaw Boulevard, right across the street.
So thank you again to the Listen But Don't podcast. All the links for their stuff will be in the description. Please check it out, guys. Thanks again. Because that brings me to all of these retcons and revisions that have been going on for the past year or so with the manga. I mean, we've all clearly come to the conclusion that it was to strengthen the story and to make it more consistent and to have less continuity errors, I would say. But I'm thinking that like the main motive here, aside from that stuff, is to set up the story better for season 3, which likely means that season 3 is absolutely going to be a thing. Now, don't get too excited. There's obviously no confirmation for this yet. I haven't personally heard anything, because if I did, you guys would hear like minutes after I do. But from what we've seen so far, most of the retcons and redraws have revolved around Child Emperor Saitama Atomic's disciples, and the private military group. And I'm pretty sure that this is all for the purpose of making season 3 have more cohesive structure to it, along with a pretty satisfying finale. So as we saw, Child Emperor and Phoenix Man, their fight was completely changed, and it eventually led to Child Emperor meeting Saitama at the end of their little encounter there. And at the end of chapter 100, when we see them fleeing away, they are met by one of Orochi's dragons that comes out of like the crack in the foundation, and Saitama knocks it away. But now I think that this is setting up like the new Saitama versus Orochi fight, which means that, as we've also been speculating, that Saitama versus Orochi is going to get a redraw, but not only that, I'm pretty sure it's going to be pushed to later in the story, with the ultimate purpose of it being able to land in that final episode of season 3. Let's put a pin in that for now, because aside from just the Saitama versus Orochi fight happening in chapter 108, it was always kind of odd that Saitama took out Orochi before we even got to see the executives get their hands dirty against the S-Class heroes, because at that point in the manga, it was built up as Orochi was the end-all be-all for the Monster Association, and if you haven't read the webcomic, you're to assume that he is going to be the absolute final boss of this arc. So the stakes are really lowered at that point, because it's like, okay, Saitama took out Orochi, and clearly the cadres are beneath him. And it's like, why are we, the audience, supposed to be invested anymore? It's like the big bad is gone, and before his henchmen have even really shown what they're capable of. So I'm thinking that they've probably acknowledged this themselves and have pushed the Saitama versus Orochi fight to after all of the cadre encounters. And another thing that I think supports this are the revisions with chapter 110 and 111, where Atomic against G5 is shortened, and also they kind of combine chapters 111, 112, and 113 with Atomic versus Black S and Homeless Emperor versus Zombie Man. And I'm thinking they're going to continue that trend with the next chapters after that, and they're probably going to combine the chapters that involve My Mask confronting Fura Ugly, Pig God confronting Gums, and Atomic's disciples along with the private military group encountering Evil Natural Water. Now it's at this point where things get a little confusing, because now we're looking way too far into the future, and I'm unsure when Saitama is actually going to fight Orochi. Either it's going to happen directly after all of the cadres were revealed, or they're going to keep pushing it further. But there's two other things that we also have to take into consideration. That's Saitama knocking Overgrown Rover, which was originally the motivation, I suppose, for Orochi going after Saitama. But like I said before, how they changed the ending of chapter 100 with Orochi, coming out of the cracks to see Saitama, that can be his motive. And I guess Saitama punching Rover can just happen whenever they really want it to. It can just probably stay chronologically the way that it originally was, but that also still needs to happen somewhat before chapter 116, I suppose, because Neon also needs to have motivation to go to the surface, because I'm sure that's still all going to happen, when he encounters the support team. So I guess that could be like the appetizer that Saitama gets in partway through the season, I suppose, and then we keep going, and then we see Drive Knight take on Neon, and then maybe we can keep even going further after that and have all of the Genos stuff happen where he saves everyone, and then we can even have Child Emperor encounter Evil Natural Water, and then we can come to the moment where most of the S-Class heroes are like seemingly defeated by the cadres. And that could be a big tension builder, heading towards the end of season 3 as well. Now, the other thing that I was talking about is Tatsumaki encountering Giro Giro. That is set up at the end of chapter 106. They fight in 107. And when Giro Giro calls for Orochi to come help her, clearly Orochi is busy with Saitama. So given that Orochi and Saitama is going to be pushed to later on, that kind of needs to change as well. So either they just retcon the dialogue, or they also push the encounter or the overall fight with Tatsumaki and Giro Giro to later on as well. But let's just backtrack a little bit to chapter 115. I know it's kind of getting confusing now, but just bear with me, because chapter 115 is when Garo wakes up and encounters Pari Pari Prisoner, but it's also when Flashy Flash encounters Saitama. So clearly that needs to happen after the Orochi encounter. So it's like, what are they going to do with that? Are they going to push that to later on as well? Because technically they could, and it really wouldn't mess anything up. Because after Saitama and Flashy Flash meet each other, I don't think that little storyline is continued until 7 chapters after that. And 122, when they're like running through the hallways and busting the walls down and they encounter Manaka. So you could easily combine those two sequences into one chapter, and I don't think there would be any issues there. So now at this point, we would be in the chapter 122 and 123 range. So Saitama versus Orochi could happen like around chapter 121, or anywhere between that and 123 or something. And that would be around a 37 or 38 chapter adaptation for season 3, which is pretty much the same number more or less as season 1. Also around that time, we have the conclusion of Tatsumaki versus the Giro Giro puppet. And then it's, revealed that Psychos is the true leader. So I think that would be a pretty satisfying ending. Like in the last episode, we see Saitama fight Orochi. Maybe that ending is retconned as well. Maybe Saitama defeats Orochi with a serious move or something, because maybe they want to keep that streak going, like season 1 and season 2 ended with a serious move. So maybe Saitama does a serious move to Orochi, but also that would make Orochi way more powerful since he survived a serious move from Saitama, because Orochi obviously comes back in his heart form later on. But regardless, after that happens, in the very last moments of the episode, we can have the Psychos reveal, like, I'm the true mastermind of the Hero Association, and I think that would be a pretty cool cliffhanger ending for it. But let me know what you think about all of this stuff in the comments. Where do you think things are headed with Orochi in season 3 and the retcons? If you like the video, guys, please give it a like. Please subscribe, trying to reach 100K by the end of the year. I also have a Twitch, Patreon. Check those out, please. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.